Hi, folks. Welcome back to Binford Chronicles. We bring authentic truth and real conversations to educate our viewers. Today, our special guest is Barry Ramey. Barry's life is dedicated to God, country, his community, and family. Before January 6th, Barry was an aircraft mechanic. In 2020, his life took a turn that would shake the foundation of his world. Barry is here to tell his story. Barry, thank you for joining us today. Your story is so important. And for all of those who did go to the Stop the Steal rally, yes, the 2020 election was stolen. There is no doubt in my mind, and that is my opinion, and somebody needs to try to change it.
I could not agree with you more. You are definitely preaching to the choir here.
Yeah, so tell us about you. Let's get to know you because, there's a lot of misconception of who these people are that went to Stop the Steal rally and got caught up in the moment. So share with us who you are, Barry.
Well, I'm an average guy. I'm in love with America. I love our Constitution. I'm a hard worker. I'm a dedicated fiance, soon to be husband to my one woman that God gave me, and I'm a very patriotic person. If I'm a nonviolent individual, but when the Constitution and the foundation of America is under attack, like we saw with the 2020 fentanyl Floyd riots, I will not sit idly by. I will get up and I will punch back if America's being punched.
Yeah. So, how did you grow up? Where did you grow up, and what's your life history that brought you to this character that you are so loyal to your country?
Well, I've been an independent on the political demographic for a long time, and I would say that my journey to conservatism, re staunch conservatism, even though I'm not a big fan of a lot of these Republicans, I'm sure a lot of your viewers can agree with me on that. But
Absolutely.
I grew up, mostly in a single parent home. My mother always struggled. I was what you would call a latchkey kid. I did a lot of raising myself. My mother was busy working two jobs at times, taking care of me and my sister. My dad was in and out of the picture. And my parents were divorced when I was 8. And I very randomly saw him, although he did remain partially in our lives. He supported my mother financially just from a distance. And so I watched her, struggle and lots of sacrifices. So we always had the bare minimum and sometimes a lot extra because, she slept on a couch at one point when we were little. So me and my sister could have our own room. And, she didn't go clothes shopping for 5, 6 years. So me and my sister could have decent clothes for school. So I watched that and, it I caught myself around the age of 18, 19, thinking that, well, America sucks. You really have to struggle. But then I got to educate myself with how it works in the real world and in other countries and what people do not have versus what we have. And I started becoming grateful for the things that I have versus focusing on what I don't have. And then I realized the beauty of America. You can achieve almost anything, if not anything. It's really up to the individual. And I let go of this self proclaimed oppressed feeling and I started to live the American dream and the benefit of America and how great this country truly is and how much freedom that we actually have. And
Hmm.
at around 18, I got involved in my first political campaign, Bush and Cheney '04. Looking back on that, am I happy about George Bush? No, but
We
I
learned a
was,
lot. A lot of
you
us
know,
were fooled.
right. And so, I began to learn the dirty tricks of politicians and how just because you have an R next to your name, um, it doesn't make
Hmm.
you a good person. And I saw that within Mitt Romney. I saw Mitt Romney as a very sneaky, slimy individual, and I volunteered on McCain and Palin's campaign, and then unfortunately, and again, I'm not proud of this, but I actually donated my time to Obama's reelection. What I,
Oh.
yeah, I would love to. There's nothing anybody can do to me that I haven't done worse to myself. but I really didn't like Romney, and I saw what Bush did, and I realized that just because you're a Republican doesn't mean you're a good person. Then along came a guy named Donald Trump, and he started to say things that really spoke to my soul, and I didn't take him seriously at first, and I don't think a lot of Americans did. But when you really were forced to stop and look at what he was saying, I used to say that I didn't vote for Trump because of his personality. I vote for his policy. I no
Same,
longer
yeah.
say that. I don't say that anymore. I vote for his personality too. I love it because the guy is an expert at getting under the skin of these crooked people and causing them to expose themselves. He's an expert at giving enough person just enough rope to hang themselves. And
Yeah.
his quirky, cocky personality is a tool that he uses, and I really think the guy's brilliant. But what is most important is that he's beginning to do what is so desperately needed in America, and that is making loving America cool again. These kids are
Hmm.
being indoctrinated. They think that it's edgy, trendy, and cool to hate America with their Che Guevara shirts as they talk trash about capitalism while they sip from a Starbucks cup and talk on their iPhone, and they promote socialism, not even knowing the
Hmm.
dangers
Yeah.
of it and how bad it is. So Trump is making loving America cool again, and I'm all in on that.
Yeah, yeah. And I grew up in New York, so I knew about Trump a long time ago. He's what got like 20, almost 30 years on me. But growing up, I remember when I first started working in Manhattan and I saw the magazine come across the top single males in America, billionaires, and I remember his name being there. And then I remember him talking and everything he talked about back then. People were kind of egging him on. Are you going to be run for president someday? When he talked about our foreign policies, he talked about manufacturing, all those things he said back then in the 80s. He said when he came into office. And I was like, you know what? I believe what he's saying because he said it when he was like 33 years old. In his 30s, he was talking exactly like that. So, the man believes what he's saying. He's living what he says. So that's when I jumped on board with Trump. I was a little kind of skeptical because he hung out with a lot of Hollywood people and I said, okay, let's see where he goes. Let's see what he does. And he did great. His first 4 years were fantastic. So
Absolutely.
that, yeah. So you're an aircraft mechanic. What school did you go to for that?
Well, I was in the process of getting my airframe license. I was on the job training. You can do that within the FAA qualifications. I was hired on by a company, worked for quite a few companies, and as they closed down, I would go up and up the chains and the upper echelons of the business. And I was in the process of getting my airframe license, but I was on the job training, self-taught. Well, not self-taught, but taught by FAA certified inspectors, and
Right,
they
right.
supervised my work, and I was just moving up the ladder like that.
Yeah. So let's head to January 6th. Now, you guys decided to make the move to go up there, and what was the initial intent to go up there to stop this deal?
Well, for me, I felt that my part, everyone plays a role, and I felt that my role would be I watched all these Trump rallies go off across America for 4 years, and on many occasions, you see Antifa and members of BLM try to come out and assault Trump supporters or a
Mm-hmm.
grandma with a MAGA hat as they go to and fro their vehicle. So I joined with a group of guys that was going to be the guardians of that space in between the Trump rally and the parking lot where they get safely to their vehicles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
So
the
that was my
intent.
only intention.
Yeah, right. And then you guys went to Stop the Steal rally, which was at the bleachers, and that went fine. And then everybody walked down to the Capitol. And did you see any suspicious characters on your way there?
At the time, I did, but I didn't know it until afterwards. Other than we did, I didn't go. I never even made it to the rally. I specifically was there to watch over people going from their car to the rally back and forth. Um, and I did when I linked up with the Proud Boys, I did see members of Antifa. Well, I can't even say that they were Antifa, but it's safe to assume that they were. They were trying to infiltrate the group of Proud Boys. They were posing as them, and they were quickly spotted and called out, and they would scurry away. There
Hmm.
we did pass several little small pockets of, let's whether they're Antifa or just left wing radicals. I'm assuming they were Antifa. They were watching ominously people going back and forth, but when we showed up in mass, they scurried away, and until after the events of January 6th that I would start to realize when watching videos that things didn't really add up all around me.
Yeah. When did you see like the Capitol Police being aggressive towards the spectators?
Well, for me, it was almost instantly. I wasn't part of the initial breach. And by initial breach, I mean the pushing over of bike racks that weren't even attached to the ground. I came about 15, 20 minutes after that happened to the West Side Senate staircase. I almost called an Uber and went back to my hotel room because it was overall uneventful. But I walked up with a small group of guys. And when I got there, people were being peaceful. They were explaining to the police that we're not here to attack you. Their hands were up, showing they didn't hold any weapons. And we started unanimously singing the national anthem. And it was amazing. Everyone singing the national anthem. And it was at that moment that two silhouettes of Capitol police officers appeared at the top towards the Capitol building. And they had what looked like rifles. They would be like paintball guns filled with rubber bullets, and they started indiscriminately firing rubber bullets into the crowd, and the yellow projectiles were bouncing off people's heads and bouncing off people's backsides. And it was at that moment that I saw a guy by the name of Joshua Black, and he got shot through the face with one of those rubber munition rounds. And when I say through the face, I'm not being hyperbolic. The man was
Yeah,
shot through his face.
I saw that video of it went right through his cheek.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a
And
video of him.
yeah, and the blood was pouring from his face. There was a moment where an elderly woman saw that scene and saw the blood, and she tried to get away from the event. And a Capitol police officer stepped out of the line and shoved her, and she was pushed over. People picked her up, and that's when that moment between that and seeing Joshua Black's significant injury, that's when where I was at, the dynamic of the crowd changed. It was no
Right.
longer let's sing the national anthem. It was no longer, hey, we're your friends, not your enemies. It was now you made us the enemy. We're going to make you the enemy back.
Yeah,
And
you
we
went into
began to fight.
protect mode. Right. You
We
started
began
to
to fight.
protect. You're like, you're hurting our people.
Right.
We're not here to cause violence, but you're hurting our people. So it totally changed the dynamic of what that rally was about. So after all this happened, you went home, and what happened when they came to your house? Did they knock on your door with a warrant and show you the warrant, or was this more like an attack on your house?
Well, I don't want to leave a significant part of the story out because, it wouldn't be fair or authentic with your viewership if I left this part out. So after the lady was pushed over and people started, their energy changed to more aggressive. Um, there was a moment where at the West Side Senate staircase where people started getting in the face of Capitol Police. Capitol Police were getting in the face back. Some punches were thrown, and that's where I did assault one officer. I was charged with two assaults, but I did not. The second one never occurred. I am guilty of the first one, and I say that because if I try to brush over the fact that I did assault a Capitol Police officer, it's not fair to the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that are behind bars, suffering from indictments, and still sitting in prison that are 100% innocent, that did not do anything that day.
Was that the
So
pepper spray charge?
it was, yes. And again, I was charged with two, and the second one never occurred. I am guilty of the first one. but my original charges were aggravated battery with a deadly dangerous weapon causing serious bodily injury and harm. Just to
Which
put that in context, that's one step under attempted murder.
yeah,
And
that's not what pepper spray does.
right. So, we'll get more into that if we talk about my bench trial. Fortunately, I was found not guilty of the more serious charges, and I had a very good attorney, but we'll leave that for later. So, the indictment came a year later. When I got home from January 6th, I was sitting on the couch. I was watching C-SPAN because I'm cool like that. I just randomly watch C-SPAN. And I watched the impeachment of Donald Trump. And I saw a congresswoman up there giving her over exuberated and narrative of the events that took place. The white supremacists attacked the Capitol, armed militias tried to overthrow the government, Proud Boys this, Oath Keepers that, insurrectionist hit me with a wiffle ball bat. It just didn't stop. And then she paused the video right on my face on Capitol
Wow.
Hill while impeaching Trump. So I knew I was going to prison. And I immediately got off the couch and bought my first pack of cigarettes in 15 years and retained an attorney. It would take a full year for the FBI to finally come do what we inevitably knew they were going to do and knock at the door. I was at
Mhm.
work. My fiance was home. She gets a knock by two agents. She refuses to answer any questions. They leave a business card. She takes that business card to my attorney, and she comes to my job to let me know that the inevitable day finally came and the FBI are looking for you.
Wow. Wow. That's a wake up moment. Like, oh my gosh, it's happening.
Yeah, and at that moment, it was was a sense of relief because I was more than willing to deal with this. But in that whole year of suspense, of constantly looking over your shoulder, not
Not
knowing when
knowing
they're going to
when.
pop out, thinking every bird in a tree has a camera phone and microphone on it, it's something that it was a sigh of relief. So it would get a lot worse, and it would take a turn where I never expected this would go. Even though I did accept my fate and was willing to turn myself in and do some time, I never
Hmm.
knew in a million years that it was going to get as bad as it did. And
Now,
that's
when the yeah, so you were smart. You got your attorney right away, even before they came to your house. Now, when they finally got you in their custody, were there harassment tactics?
Oh yeah. So if you do a quick Google search, even though I don't recommend you use Google, DuckDuckGo or something, but if you do a quick search on my name, it'll say that I threatened an FBI agent who was investigating my case.
Yeah, I
That
saw
is
that.
it is an egregious lie done by the FBI, and further proof of that is the charge and then the sentencing enhancement would be dropped because it never happened. So when my fiance brought my attorney to the card and then came to my job, she went she came to my job for me. The FBI was there, and the FBI, my attorney, reached out to the special agent in charge. The special agent in charge told my attorney that we are about 30 days to a few months from needing to sit down with Mr. Ramey, and when we do, we'll let you, the attorney, know. And my attorney informed them if we need to turn him in, we're more than willing to do that. I will turn him in personally. Special agent said no problem. Well, about 2 weeks later, I get a call at my job from a random number. The parts manager for the job comes up and says, "Hey, Barry, you have a call on line one. They say their name is Ryan so and so. They say they're a close family friend of yours." So it was strange because I don't get calls at my job. And so I went to
Hmm.
line one. There's nobody on line one. And so my immediate thought was, okay, I'm being doxxed. As somebody that goes to flag waving events and different conservative free speech events and protests to do security, you always know that in a it's almost inevitable that Antifa is going to dox you.
Hmm.
They're going
Yeah.
to find out where you work. They're going to find out who you are, and I'm not really hiding. So it was inevitable. I'm thinking I'm being doxxed. So we have access to an app or a subscription to a service called Truth Finder, where you can extensively look up phone numbers and information on people. So I took that phone number, I put it in Truth Finder, and it came back to this Ryan so and so that just claimed they were a family friend of mine. So I called
Mm,
the number back. I let the person know, hey, you know who I am. I know who you are. Here's your address. Here's your vehicle VIN number. Well, that was the FBI agent investigating my case that said that they were a close family friend. By law, they need to identify themselves as a law enforcement officer. And also
mm-hmm,
by law, he already made contact with my attorney, knew I had representation, therefore should not have tried to reach out to me at all. He knew where I worked. He knew who I was. They knew everything about me by the time that knock came at the door. So
mm-hmm.
I didn't know it was an FBI agent. Over a year would go by. I would go to trial. I would be found guilty on some things, innocent on others, and the sentencing enhancement on the 11th hour before my sentencing would be dropped when the DOJ and the prosecutors admitted they withheld evidence for over a year with a text message that exonerated me after the agent already admitted he didn't identify himself as law enforcement. So yeah, there was a lot
Wow.
of tricky play from the FBI.
Yeah, they kind of take their power and they take advantage of it a little bit there. Also, I was wondering, they charged you. Were you sentenced for like 60 months and then 36? And is it 36 a halfway house? Is that what that is?
No, halfway house is actually part of the 60-month sentence due to the First Step Act and the Second Chance Act. Because I beat the most serious charges at court because they never occurred, um, I qualified for the First Step Act, and now I'm at a point where after my first 6 months, I get 15 days off for every month that I serve with good behavior. So I was able to get, and you're qualified for a year, up to a year of your sentence in the halfway house. So that's why I was able to get out. I served approximately 2.8 years in prison, and now I'm in the halfway house phase with a GPS monitor.
And how are those prison conditions?
Not good, not good at all. They're terrible. Some of the conditions, FCI Miami wasn't the worst conditions, but the worst food possible. And that's not indicative of every BOP, Bureau of Prisons facility. Some of them have reasonable food, but FCI Miami is not one of them. And it was overall a little more clean, but the corruption at FCI Miami is extremely intense. Peter Navarro put out an article in Washington Times about this as he experienced it when he did his time in the camp. I was in the low, but some of the conditions of jail in Northern Neck Regional Jail, USP Atlanta was filled with rats and cockroaches, and it
Oh,
was really bad, really bad.
yeah.
And DC jail is horrendous. Um, and Northern Neck Regional Jail in Warsaw, Virginia was probably the worst, next to Broward County Jail here in Fort Lauderdale, where I'm at. That was probably worse, but the conditions are terrible. They're terrible.
And how were the correctional officers there? Did they judge you, or did they just do their job?
Um, it goes both ways. There were some officers, I would say a majority of officers would either do their job and don't judge you, um, and they were pro-Trump. And there were some officers that actually treated me personally pretty well. But then there was other instances, especially at FCI Miami and Warsaw, Virginia, that we were egregiously mistreated, very bad, especially in before I got to the DC jail, before Congress put a stop to a lot of it. Those guys went through hell and back at the DC gulag. But Northern Neck and FCI Miami, there was a lot of mistreatment there, and yeah, I've got that all on paper and in writing. It was pretty bad.
Wow. So, how's your family doing with all of this? Have you got family support, or did you have some family that were upset about it? How are you doing with that?
My family's pretty small. It's just mainly me, my sister, my mom, and my fiance. And she's got her brother and her mom. I get along really well with her brother. I'm actually working for him now at his company. But me and my mother, our bond became stronger. Same thing with my sister. My sister was before this election. My sister was a far left liberal. I mean, gay pride this and tranny rights for everyone, and she voted for Trump. So
Good for
she's
her.
been watching Newsmax every night. She's got a huge crush on Rob Schmidt. But so there's that, and the bond that for me and my fiance, the bond that we have because of this experience, I don't think can ever be broken. She has been a champion for me. She has stuck by my side every bit of the way. She's at the inauguration right now as we speak, because it's her time to go relax after everything she's been through for the last few years.
Yeah, she's been a
So
really huge rock for you.
she has,
She's
yeah,
been by your side 100%. I've seen a couple of her interviews as well, and I kudos to her, because this is a really tough time. You
yeah,
know, to have
yeah,
to go through all of that with you, and kudos to your mom. I know just listening to your story, how she was a single mom, but she always put you guys first.
hmm
She made so you grew up in a loving household. You had your struggles, but all that love really goes a long way in building a good man and
yeah.
character. So it's really nice to hear that she worked so hard, but she didn't give up, and she still had good spirit and took care of her kids first. And I think that really means a lot in today's world.
It
So
does.
yeah, it does. What I wanted to ask you about was JD Vance's comments on the J6 pardons, because initially Trump was going to handle those pardons, and then he kind of pushed it off to JD Vance. Now, JD Vance had made some comments, and a lot of people have different readings of that. I wasn't too happy about it, because it didn't make me feel secure that the right decision was going to be made for the J6ers. I want to play that video for you, okay? So I'm going to bring it on up.
Sure.
To ask you about January 6th. You called yourself the candidate of law and order. When Time Magazine asked you if you would consider pardoning all the rioters, you said, yes, absolutely. Sure. You called them patriots.
Nothing is perfect in life, but you have people from Minneapolis, you have people just from 5 days ago in Washington, D.C., they were having fistfights and fighting with the police. They were spraying and destroying. They were desecrating our monuments in Washington, D.C. 5 days ago, and nothing happened to them. And you can't have two systems of justice.
You promised to pardon those who attacked the Capitol on January 6th. Are you still vowing to follow through with that promise?
We're looking at it right now, most likely, yeah.
Well,
those people have suffered long and hard, and there may be some exceptions to it. I have to look. These people have suffered. Their lives have been destroyed. I'm going to be acting very quickly.
Within your first 100 days, first day?
First day.
Pardons, President Trump says there's a process. Where is the line drawn on who will and wouldn't be considered for a pardon?
I think it's very simple. Look, if you protested peacefully on January the 6th and you've had Merrick Garland's Department of Justice treat you like a gang member, you should be pardoned. If you committed violence on that day, obviously you shouldn't be pardoned. And there's a little bit of a gray area there, but we're very much committed to seeing the equal administration of law. And there are a lot of people, we think, in the wake of January the 6th who were prosecuted unfairly. We need to rectify that.
Okay, so that was a video that kind of concerned me, because I'm like, is he going to speak to the J6ers? Because what's in your documents isn't necessarily what's true.
It's exactly right. And I would hope that President Trump, and I have a lot of faith in him, and I respect the hell out of JD Vance, but I hope that President Trump realizes this is the same Department of Justice that attacked him. This is the same Department of Justice that came after him and put all these different indictments on him. What if we, the people, read those indictments the way the DOJ read them? Would we still have your back, or did we look beyond the pale and were able to see that this was egregiously trumped up against you, pun intended, and that what they wrote on paper isn't what happened at all. Because taking these things at face value, you're taking a corrupt DOJ that we the people are willing to admit is corrupt. We the people are willing to admit that they're liars because we voted the way we voted on November 5th. And when he campaigned this entire time about pardoning the political hostages, America knew what he said. America voted for that. Whether whether JD Vance wants to admit it or not, they gave you a mandate. Unlike Joe Biden, who said he wasn't going to pardon his son when we all knew he would, Trump didn't look the American people in the face and lie. He never has. He looked them right in the eye and said, "This is what I'm going to do." So it would, I would encourage JD Vance to look at the fact what was done. Okay, so you take someone like me, take the peaceful ones, yes, get them out of prison, get them home and pardon them. But if you want to look at case by case basis, yes, there was Antifa in the crowd. I personally helped expose one to the Gateway pundit, but there was so much stuff that occurred that's on video that led up to me shooting a squirt of pepper spray back at police officers. And what happened to us and the labels that were put on us by the Department of Justice and Merrick Garland's office while we served our time, we were labeled as domestic terrorists in the prison system. And we were treated as such. It's very extreme. It was the first time in my life I ever had a broken heart hearing the Department of Justice and the prosecutor tell me that I'm a domestic terrorist at my first bail hearing. We can have the conversation of how you feel about my actions that day, but to label me a domestic terrorist because you're trying to superimpose a narrative on Trump and his supporters to win an election in the future, that's something that I hope JD Vance sees. So, yes, I did assault a police officer. Those police officers attacked us while singing the national anthem. We didn't burn a city to the ground. We left and respected the curfew. And then we were put through hell. Our family was put through hell. My fiance, who was not at January 6th, had her social media controlled and manipulated and censored and monitored by the Bureau of Prisons while I served my time. And their guise for being able to do that was that I was labeled a domestic terrorist. So they monitored her. They actually threatened me to call her and tell her to remove posts from her social media that were pro-Trump and anti-Biden, or threatening to throw me at a maximum security prison in Indiana at Terre Haute at the communications monitoring unit, where they actually have members of ISIS and members of Al-Qaeda, mass murderers. This label of greatest severity that was placed on all January 6ers made our time even harder than prison already naturally does. We were denied mail, newspapers, visitations, communication with certain people in our families. We were put through such an extra several steps of punishment and hard time, that above what prison already does. And so I would ask JD Vance to consider that, and consider that Matthew Graves, the district attorney for DC, who indicted all of us, who sent the FBI after us and our family, is the same prosecutor that gave a pro-Palestinian protester 48 hours of community service for punching a female Capitol Police officer in the face. I'm still serving my sentence years later. I showed up to protect Donald Trump supporters. So if you want to classify me as a gang member or a domestic terrorist and not pardon me, then you're just capitulating to the communists and the DOJ. And I would highly recommend to look at the bigger picture, because that's what the American people did for you.
They basically wanted to excommunicate you, and then they infringed on your fiance's First Amendment right to free speech, and made her feel a little like she was also a criminal. Like, here now they're spying on me, telling me what I can write, can say, can't say. It's an extreme overbearing power of lawfare. And I hope that JD Vance does look at this, because that's the first thing that came to my mind. There's close to 2,000 people that have been charged. And for him to just look at a piece of paper with this corrupt DOJ, the FBI, it's not fair. They need to look at each case if they wanted to. each person talk to the person, and they're not going to do that. So they should just pardon all of the J6ers. That's why I voted. That was one of the reasons I voted. I says we need Trump back because he needs to free these people that had their lives destroyed, literally destroyed. To call these people terrorists is an insult. They were there because they love their country. They were there to show their grievance for what happened in the elections. And you're not going to tell me that the election wasn't stolen. There were anomalies that needed to be investigated and not investigated by the people who caused the anomalies. So there's a lot to be said here. I want to thank you for coming on with me today. I really want people to know who the J6ers are. You guys are people, you're patriots, you're Americans, you love this country, and you're not this label that they put on you. You're not an insurrectionist, you're not a terrorist, you're an American practicing and acting within your rights. And you went there to protect. And if you see cops and people around you getting hurt, that's going to influence you to go into protect mode, which is what happened. Barry, you have to get your life back together financially and, work-wise. How can people help you? Do you have a Give, Send, Go page?
I do. It's been financially devastating. We're trying really hard to get back on our feet. It's givesendgo.com/Barry Ramey. And I'm also on X at Ramey is right. Yeah, it's been hard. My family, it's not just me, it's my entire family that came together to help me, but it took everything they got. And we're starting from the ground up.
Yeah, so, we're going to keep you in our prayers along with all of the other J6ers. And I want to thank you for sharing your story today. I really wanted to hear more about you. I kept trying to find more information about you personally, who you were. And this was the best way to do it, just bring you on so people can see you and see it coming from your heart and seeing that you are accountable for the actions that you did do. But this was just extreme. It was way too extreme, and you were treated harshly and horribly as a great American.
We are the people, the J6ers, that want to build this country up. We want to make it great again. We want to make it better. And we were treated like the people should have been treated that burned our cities down to the ground all summer long. They were put on a pedestal while we were thrown under the prison. And, I hope the American people can see that, because it wouldn't deter any of us. And I'm sure I could speak for all of us. It only strengthened our love for America. They didn't break us, and they never will. And so that's that.
So Barry, I would like to thank you for sharing your story. It's hardcore. You're not a hardcore criminal and should still have life to look forward to after this event. And I'm going to keep praying for you and sharing your story and letting people know how they can help you with your Give, Send, Go. And the other website was, if you don't mind saying that again.
X at Ramey is right. And my fiance put up a website where you can see my entire story, ospreysensei.com. That's her online pseudonym, but all the articles about me and what we've been through in prison and continue to go through are there extensively.
So my big question to our viewers is, will some J6ers be left behind? We don't want to do that. So please send your messages to J.D. Vance and let him know that we need to give justice back to our J6ers. Remember, close to 7,000 people have been charged. No, sorry. It's close to 2,000 people have been charged and that have been documented. And remember, we had a corrupt FBI and DOJ, and we saw what they did to President Trump. I want to thank everybody for joining me on Binford Chronicles. We have more news for you in our future podcasts. Remember to share, like, and comment. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications of our next podcast. Thank you again for joining us on Binford Chronicles.